I never used to think much of locked doors. In a house where privacy was a myth, between two kids under 10, a golden retriever with a bladder like a teacup, and a wife who worked part-time from home, doors were always left ajar. Open to chaos. Open to routine. So, when I heard the faint click of the bathroom lock on a sleepy Tuesday morning, something in me paused. It wasn't unusual for Caroline to lock the door, not exactly. But usually, she was brushing her teeth, or trying to pee in peace with our toddler's fingers reaching under the crack. This time, she wasn't brushing her teeth. She wasn't showering. I knew that because I hadn't heard the water. She was silent, and silence in this house always meant something was wrong. I stood outside the door, my coffee still in hand, cooling too fast in the autumn air that drifted in through the open kitchen window. The hallway was half-lit, the soft gray morning light slanting through the blinds, painting long stripes across the floor. My socks muffled my steps, but the creak of the third floorboard from the end betrayed me, as always. Inside, I heard the faintest tap-tap-tap. Texting. Her phone. Quick and nervous. Tap. Pause. Tap-tap. Like a stutter in Morse code. I waited. Caroline. I called, my voice quiet, careful. Everything okay? Silence again. Then a muffled, yeah, just a sec. Too fast. Too high-pitched. Too much. Something shifted in my gut. I waited 5 seconds. Then 6. Then knocked once. A pause. Then, rustling. Hasty, like papers or clothing being shoved somewhere. Another second passed. Then the lock clicked again and the door opened 2 inches. Caroline's face peeked through, damp hair pushed behind one ear, a weak smile on her lips. Sorry, she said too brightly. I was just checking my calendar. In the bathroom? I didn't say it out loud. Her phone wasn't in her hand anymore. Her eyes flicked to mine and then past me, down the hall, where the kids were still asleep. You okay? I asked, my voice too casual. She nodded, smiled again. Of course. Then she closed the door behind her and brushed past me like nothing had happened. But something had. I stood outside the bathroom for a second longer than I should have. My coffee was cold. The hallway felt colder. It started there, with a locked door, with the soft click of something private, something hidden, in a home that wasn't supposed to have secrets. The day passed like it always did. Breakfast rushed, kids off to school, me to the office. But my thoughts stayed in the hallway, outside that locked door. My work suffered. I caught myself rereading the same line in a proposal 5 times. By lunchtime, I gave up and drove home. Caroline's car wasn't in the driveway. The house was quiet. I stepped inside, not sure what I was looking for. Just a feeling, an itch under the skin. The bathroom smelled faintly of her shampoo. A wet towel hung over the rack, as if she'd showered earlier. I scanned the counter. Clean. Too clean. Then, on instinct, I pulled open the drawer where she kept her makeup. Nothing unusual. But beneath the sink, in a box labeled feminine care, I found a box of birth control pills. I stared at it for a long time. We hadn't needed those in years. I'd had a vasectomy 2 summers ago after Sonia, our youngest, was born. It had been my idea. We were happy with 2. Caroline agreed. We even joked about how nice it was not to worry anymore. So why the pills? I picked up the pack. 2 pills were missing. Monday and Tuesday. Today was Tuesday. I stared at the strip like it might offer an explanation. It didn't. For the rest of the day, I floated through a fog. My brain tried to rationalize. Maybe her doctor recommended them for hormone balance. Maybe she had cramps she didn't want to talk about. Maybe. But no. I knew her. Caroline didn't keep secrets. Not from me. Until now. That night, I watched her. Watched how she moved, how she talked. She laughed at the same joke from our daughter, kissed our son goodnight, like always. But her eyes flicked to her phone too often. And after dinner, when I offered to clean up, she disappeared to send a few emails. The bathroom door locked again. I stood outside, coffee in hand once more. Waiting. Tap, tap, tap. The same nervous rhythm. I knocked. Silence. Then the quick flush of the toilet. The tap of the sink. The creak of the mirror cabinet. Too many sounds, none of them genuine. When she emerged, she looked at me like nothing was wrong. Can we talk? I asked. Her eyes widened for just a second, just long enough. Now, she asked. I was going to watch that show. Yeah, I said. Now. We sat in the living room. The kids were asleep. The only light came from the dim lamp by the couch. You've been acting strange, I said. She didn't respond. Her eyes were on her lap, where her fingers twisted together. "You're taking the pill again." That got her attention. She looked up sharply. I held her gaze. "You're on birth control." A long pause. "It's for my skin," she said quietly. "My doctor prescribed it." "Hormones." I stared. "Without telling me?" Another pause. I didn't think it mattered. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. "You didn't think it mattered to tell me you were taking medication again?" She shrugged, eyes flashing. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" She stood up. "I'm going to bed." And just like that, she walked away. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to her breathe beside me. Shallow, uneven. Her phone buzzed once at 1:07 a.m. A soft vibration on the nightstand. She didn't move. I didn't either. By morning, she was up before me. By the time I came downstairs, she was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes like nothing happened. I played along, made small talk, laughed when I needed to. But inside, something had shifted. And that night, when she went to the bathroom again, locking the door behind her, I stood outside once more. This time, I didn't knock. I waited. And I listened. And when she panicked, when the tap 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 of texting suddenly stopped, and I heard the clatter of something falling to the floor, I knew I was right. Something was happening. Something she didn't want me to know. The sound that echoed through the bathroom door wasn't loud. A soft clatter, maybe plastic against porcelain, but it sounded like a fire alarm in my head. Caroline muttered something on the other side, a curse under her breath, and then silence again. Deafening, charged silence. I backed away, quietly, letting my feet carry me down the hall before she emerged. I didn't want her to know I'd been listening. I didn't want her to adjust her mask, whatever shape it took. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The flinch when I knocked. The lie about her doctor. The second phone I knew she had, but hadn't yet seen. Her startled reaction, like a person caught hiding a match in a forest fire. Something was happening. Something intentional. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I told Caroline I had a late meeting and stayed home. She barely reacted, just sipped her tea and double-checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. At 8:10 a.m., she left. At 8:13, I was in the bathroom, glove on, searching. It was like opening someone else's diary. Her makeup bag held nothing but mascara, foundation, and that same lipstick she'd worn since last winter. The cabinet was clean. The drawer under the sink was too neat. But the vent? The vent was off by a fraction of an inch. A little too loose. I crouched, unscrewed the cover slowly, careful not to scratch the tile. Inside, behind a folded hand towel, was a cheap burner phone, screen cracked, no case, no lock code. Just sitting there, like it didn't matter if it was found. I held it like it might burn me. No password. Messages, no contact names. Just numbers. Dozens of them. All from one number. I missed the quiet. Same time tomorrow? He home. Can't stop thinking about last week. My breath caught. I didn't scroll further. I didn't want to. My hands were shaking too hard. I put the phone back, exactly where it had been, reattached the vent cover, and cleaned the edges with a tissue so my fingerprints wouldn't linger. Then I walked out, into the hallway, into a different version of my life. She was cheating on me. I didn't know who. Not yet. But the texts were intimate, like a pattern long in motion. This wasn't new. It wasn't impulsive. This was deliberate. I paced for hours before deciding on the next step. By noon, I had a plan. I drove to a strip mall on the edge of town where nobody would recognize me and bought a burner phone of my own. I created an email, installed a basic cloning app, and sent a mirror link to the hidden phone's number. It would silently forward messages to my new phone. She wouldn't know, not unless she dug deep. Then I waited. That afternoon, Caroline came home humming softly, a plastic shopping bag in hand. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, asked about dinner plans, and went upstairs to freshen up. I nodded, smiled. Inside, I was watching her skin peel away in layers. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was somewhere beneath this performance. But how deep? That evening, her secret phone buzzed while we were on the couch, watching a cooking show we'd both seen a dozen times. I excused myself to check the laundry and stared at the clone on my burner in the dark of the basement. You didn't lock the door this time. I missed the sound of your laugh. Are you wearing it? Wearing what? The reply came seconds later. Of course. I want him to see it and never know it's not for him. I turned to stone. What was she wearing for me that wasn't for me? I had to know. The next morning, I left for work like usual. Or at least I made her think I did. Instead, I circled the neighborhood and returned once she'd gone. I searched our bedroom. Nothing. Nothing in the drawers. Nothing in the closet that didn't already belong. But her jewelry box, normally pristine, had a new compartment. A tiny black case, tucked beneath the satin lining, that I'd never seen before. Inside was a necklace. Delicate. Gold. A single opal teardrop pendant that shimmered when it caught the light. I'd never seen her wear it. And I hadn't bought it. She wore it. Not for me, but for him. Whoever he was. That night, I stared at her across the dinner table. She wore the pendant, just as the message said. It rested against her skin like a claim. Mine, the stranger said. Not yours. Caroline smiled at me like nothing had changed. Long day? She asked, twirling spaghetti onto her fork. Exhausting, I lied. You should take a day off soon. You've been working so hard. Her eyes sparkled. I wondered if she practiced this look in the mirror. I nodded. Maybe soon. The pendant caught the kitchen light again, like a signal I wasn't supposed to see. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone in my office and read through every message. Every dirty, delicate, manipulative line. There were codes. Phrases they used often. Laundry day meant they'd met. White roses meant something else, maybe a place. Tea time was a time. I started writing it all down. By 3 a.m., I had 3 pages of notes. And one more question. Who was it? There were no names. Just the number. I searched public directories. Nothing. Burner phone. No address, no metadata. But then I noticed something odd. The area code. It was local. Not just local. Our zip code local. That meant the man she was sleeping with lived nearby. Maybe blocks away. Maybe someone I'd met. A neighbor. A friend. Or worse. Someone from my life. I didn't sleep. I lay next to her while she dreamed. Her breath steady, mouth slightly parted, skin glowing faintly in the moonlight spilling through the blinds. She looked peaceful. I wondered if he'd seen her like this. I wondered if he'd touched her in this light. And then I wondered what would happen if I confronted her now. If I woke her up and told her I knew. If I said I saw the texts. I saw the pendant. I know everything. But I didn't. Because I needed more. I needed to know who. And more importantly, I needed to know how long. Because the longer it had gone on, the colder I felt inside. The more calculated it became. And if it had been months or years, then this wasn't just a mistake. It was a second life. The next day, the clone lit up again. I love the way you looked at me today. He doesn't suspect? No. He's oblivious. Oblivious. The word shattered something in me. That night, I followed her. She said she had a late work meeting. Marketing project. Her boss was demanding. I nodded like I believed her. 20 minutes later, I tailed her car from 3 blocks back. She didn't go to her office. She didn't even turn toward downtown. She drove to the other side of town, past the strip malls, past the grocery store, into a residential neighborhood. She parked. A porch light came on. A silhouette appeared in the doorway. And when he stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, familiar, I felt my stomach drop through the floor. Because I recognized him. I knew that porch. Knew the shape of the trees surrounding it. The low hum of wind chimes dangling from the corner. I'd stood there before. I'd leaned against that railing, cold beer in hand, laughing at a barbecue, trusting the man who now stood beneath the same light, waiting for my wife. Ryan Maddox. Not just a friend. Not just a neighbor. He was my colleague. My friend. My kids had called him Uncle Ree. We'd worked together for nearly 6 years at the firm, shared projects, carpooled to client meetings, confided frustrations over cheap takeout in the break room. He had eaten at my table, toasted Caroline on her birthday, held my son when he was still learning to walk. And now? Now he stood at his front door, looking down the sidewalk like a man welcoming a secret. Like a man waiting for a married woman he thought he'd outsmarted. I pulled over 2 blocks away, turned off the engine, and waited. 3 minutes later, Caroline's car glided to a stop in front of his house. She stepped out, hair down, coat buttoned, but short enough that I saw the edge of a black dress underneath. She adjusted the pendant on her neck, the one not meant for me, and walked toward him. He didn't even pretend to hesitate. She stepped onto the porch. He took her face in both hands and kissed her. No guilt, no fear. They stood in the soft yellow porch light like they were the only 2 people in the world. My hands curled around the steering wheel. But I didn't move. I didn't burst in, fists swinging. I didn't yell. I didn't even cry. I sat in my car and watched the woman I loved disappear into someone else's house, into someone else's life, because I needed to understand before I tore everything down. When I got home, it was after midnight. The kids were asleep. The house felt colder than it had any right to. I stood in our bedroom for a long time, staring at the photo on the dresser. Our wedding day, the ocean behind us, sunlight caught in Caroline's hair. I looked so happy in that picture, so convinced. How long had it been going on? 6 weeks? 6 months? Longer? Had it started in our home? Had I ever left for work while she was still tangled in his sheets? The weight of it all pressed on my chest like a cinder block. I needed answers. Real ones. Not guesswork or glances. I needed to confront Ryan. But not yet. I took a different approach the next day. I played dumb. Smiled through breakfast. Kissed Caroline on the cheek before she left for work. "Have a good one," I said. She smiled back, so convincingly, and said, "You too, babe." But I'd seen what her mornings really looked like now. I called out sick at work, not that it mattered. I hadn't slept a full night in days. Then I walked straight into our firm's HR department and asked for something I hadn't thought I'd ever want. Ryan's personnel file. "I'm sorry," the assistant said, blinking. "Why would you need?" "He asked me to review it for a project bid." I lied. "Wants me to make sure there's nothing that would raise flags during clearance checks." She hesitated, then handed it over. And there it was, an address confirmation form, dated 6 months ago. He'd moved into that house in March, 5 weeks before Caroline started wearing the pendant. That night, when Caroline returned home, I pretended to sleep on the couch. She walked past me, slow and careful, her heels muffled by the carpet. I cracked one eye open just in time to see her set her purse down quietly, then tiptoe upstairs. I gave her 5 minutes. Then I opened the purse. The burner was there. She hadn't removed it this time. Maybe she thought I'd never look. I pulled it out, already knowing the password from my clone. The screen lit up. "You're perfect. He'll never know. Let's run away one day." And then, from earlier that night, "Wear that dress. The one you know drives me crazy." She had worn it. I saw it when she stepped out of the car. The same dress she wore on our anniversary last year. The one I bought her. I should have been angry. I was angry. But what I felt more was shame. Shame that I didn't see it sooner. Shame that I once kissed her goodnight after she'd been with him. I spent the next day crafting my revenge. Not the screaming, slamming doors kind. I didn't want to throw punches or break things. I wanted something cleaner, sharper. So I started with what I knew best, technology. I built a data packet from the phone clone, including every message, every image, every detail with timestamps and locations. I traced Ryan's phone records too, burner apps, private logins. By midnight, I had a dossier. Names, dates, photos, and then I drafted the emails. One to Caroline, one to Ryan, one to our firm's leadership board. I scheduled them for Friday, noon, 3 days. Just enough time to prepare. Just enough time to watch their little world unravel before I lit the match. The next day, Caroline tried to be affectionate again. Her hand brushed my back as I washed the dishes. Her lips grazed my cheek in the hallway. "You seem quiet lately," she said gently. I just smiled. "Work's been exhausting." She nodded like she believed it. The worst kind of betrayal is the one served with a smile. By Thursday evening, I was ready. Then came the message that shattered what little resolve I had left. From Ryan's number to Caroline. "It's almost time. I'll tell him tomorrow. We'll be free." Free. They were planning to tell me. Together. To make me the final joke. I stared at the message until the screen went dim. And I changed my plan. No more quiet revenge. If they wanted a confrontation, I'd give them one. I texted Caroline from her burner. "Dinner. My place. 7:30. Tell him by then." And then I did the same from a new anonymous number to Ryan. "He knows. If you have any decency, tell him. Before 7:30. And finally, I texted them both again. "If neither of you has the guts to tell me, I'll see you tonight anyway." Surprise. That night, at 7:25, I sat in our living room, lights dimmed, 2 glasses of wine untouched on the coffee table. I waited. 7:30 came. Then 7:32. Then headlights in the driveway. Caroline's car. A second set followed behind, Ryan's. I rose from the couch slowly, smoothed my shirt, and walked to the front door just as their silhouettes stepped onto the porch. I opened it before they could knock. Caroline gasped. Ryan stiffened. "I was expecting you," I said calmly. Caroline opened her mouth, then closed it. Ryan stepped forward. I held up a hand. Don't, I said. Not yet. I opened the door wider, gesturing for them to come in. Let's not do this on the porch. And as they stepped inside, the door clicked shut behind them like the final move in a trap. They stepped into the house like people walking into a funeral parlor, wide-eyed, silent, unsure where to put their hands. I watched them from the entryway, arms crossed loosely, not yet ready to strike. Caroline went first. She walked slowly into the living room, her eyes darting toward the wine glasses on the table, still untouched, as if they were waiting for someone else. Ryan followed, hands shoved in his coat pockets, his face drawn tight, jaw flexing like he was working up the courage to speak. Neither of them said a word. For a moment, we just stood there, the three of us in a triangle of silence. A family man, a wife, a friend. Then I shut the door behind them. Click. That sound, sharp, final, made Caroline flinch. Sit, I said, gesturing to the couch. They sat. Together. Of course. I pulled the chair from the corner and placed it in front of them. Not beside. Not across the room. Right in front. Close enough that they had to look at me. Caroline opened her mouth. David, No. I said, my voice calm. Too calm. You'll speak when I ask you to. Her mouth snapped shut like a scolded child. Ryan looked down at his hands. His fingers were trembling. Good. I reached down and picked up the manila folder on the table. It was thick, heavier than it looked. I want to start with a story, I said, voice steady. About a man who trusted two people more than anyone else in the world. I flipped the folder open. Inside were printed screenshots, email headers, phone records, and a few high-resolution photographs I'd printed at the office. Each one placed gently into sheet protectors. Evidence, not accusations. The man thought his life was steady. I continued. Good job. 2 kids. A house filled with laughter and love. And then, one day, he heard the bathroom door lock. I didn't look at Caroline as I said it. I looked straight at Ryan. She said she was texting her boss. She said it was just emails. She said there was nothing wrong. Ryan looked up. David, this wasn't. I slammed the folder shut, and he flinched. You don't get to talk yet either, I said, still calm. You'll both have your turn. Caroline's breath hitched. Her hands were curled into fists in her lap. I stood, walked to the side table, and picked up the burner phone, the one she thought was still hidden in the vent. I dropped it onto the coffee table between us. The screen lit up briefly. The message history still open. Caroline let out a soft, involuntary gasp. Ryan shifted on the couch like it burned him. That's where it started, I said. But not where it ends. I pulled out another item, a flash drive. I didn't need to play it. They already knew what was on it. The bathroom camera. The moments when she took the pills. The texts she typed. The moments she thought I wasn't watching. Caroline looked sick. I don't care about the sex, I said flatly. It's the rituals that interest me. The quiet lies. The hidden smiles. The plans. Ryan finally spoke. We never met. Don't insult me with never meant, I snapped. You meant everything. You meant it every time you waited for me to leave. You meant it when you told her to wear that necklace. You meant it when you kissed her on your porch. That shut him up. I paced for a moment, trying to rein in the storm inside my chest. Then I faced Caroline. Was there ever a moment when you thought to stop? I asked her, quieter now. She blinked. Her lips trembled, but no words came. You could have come to me, I said. You could have said it wasn't working, that you felt distant, that you needed something else. But you didn't. A long pause. Then, finally, she whispered, I was afraid. Of me. Of losing everything. You chose to lose everything, I said. You just hoped I wouldn't find out. She started to cry. Quiet, shaky sobs. But I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just resolve. Then I turned to Ryan. And you? I asked. He stared at the floor. You had a front row seat to my life. You shook my hand and stabbed me with the other. So tell me, how long? His voice was barely audible. Since March. 7 months. I nodded. And the kids? Caroline looked up sharply. No, she said quickly. Never around them. Never in this house. Not yet, I corrected. But it was only a matter of time. They didn't deny it. I walked back to the table and picked up 2 envelopes. These are for you, I said, tossing one into Ryan's lap, the other to Caroline. They looked confused until they opened them. Ryan's face paled. Caroline's lips parted in horror. Inside were resignation forms for Ryan, typed, formatted, and pre-signed by legal. All that remained was his signature. The second document was a formal complaint addressed to HR, outlining inappropriate behavior with an employee's spouse. Attached, a USB stick containing all the evidence. Caroline's envelope held something different. A separation agreement. Not a divorce. Not yet. Just enough to make it legally known that we were no longer together, no longer united in finances or responsibility. This isn't about punishment, I said. This is about distance. I need space from the wreckage you two created. Caroline looked up, mascara streaked down her cheeks. What about the kids? You'll still see them, I said. I'll never take them from you. But this? I gestured between us. This is over. Ryan's voice cracked. I'll step down. I smiled coldly. You already have. The board's getting those documents in the morning. He hung his head. Caroline reached for my hand, but I stepped back. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said. I'm doing it for clarity. Then I pulled out one last envelope. This one I placed on the table gently. Paternity tests, I said. Caroline recoiled like I'd struck her. I had to know, just in case. Her voice trembled. They're yours. They are. She nodded, almost in relief. But they won't grow up watching their father be humiliated, I said. I pointed to the door. You both have 2 minutes to get out. Separately. They stared. I raised my voice only slightly. Now? Caroline stood first, shaky, her hand on the wall for balance. Ryan followed, silent. He left through the back door. She left through the front. And then I was alone. Just me and the mess. The quiet after the explosion. I sat down in the chair again, the house still echoing with absence. But I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. Until my phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. You did the right thing. I stared at it, heart pounding. Who? I didn't recognize the number. No name. No hint. Just that message. And then, check the mailbox. I rose slowly, heart thundering, and walked out into the night. The air was cold, the street silent, and inside the mailbox was a small black envelope. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single photo of Ryan and Caroline, taken months ago, outside a hotel. Intimate, smiling, long before I ever suspected. And on the back, a note, written in precise handwriting. You only know part of the story. I stood in the driveway, clutching the photograph like it might vanish in the wind. Caroline, Ryan, outside a hotel I didn't recognize. The timestamp on the back, 6 months ago. Long before I'd noticed the foil on the bathroom floor. Before the burner phone. Before the locked door that started all this. But it wasn't the image that held me there in the cold. It was the message. You only know part of the story. I turned it over in my hand, studying the handwriting. Neat. Precise. Familiar, somehow. Not Caroline's. Not Ryan's. I looked down the street. Empty. Only the soft amber glow of streetlights and the hush of wind through leafless trees. The mailbox creaked, closed behind me. Inside the house, everything was still as I left it. Wine glasses untouched. The burner phone resting cold on the table. And that photo, now heavier in meaning, now begging questions I hadn't thought to ask. Who sent it? Why now? And what part of the story didn't I know? I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, the photo propped up on my chest, waiting for some answer to come. By morning, I had a plan. I went back to the beginning. It started with the bathroom. So I went back there. Not just to search, but to examine. Everything. The drawer where I found the pills. The vent where she hid the burner. And finally, the cabinet under the sink, which I hadn't checked since the first day. I pulled everything out. Bleach, hair products, cotton balls. And behind them, tucked against the wall, was a small velvet box. Not hers. Not mine. Inside were USB drives. 4 of them. I stared. Each was labeled. March. April. May. June. I took them to my office, hands shaking. The files were dated. Video clips. Security footage. Audio recordings. Not from my house. From Ryan's. Multiple angles. Night vision. Clearly placed hidden cameras. And in each one, Caroline. But she wasn't alone. Ryan wasn't always the man in the frame. At least, not at first. In March, it was another man, someone I didn't know. Late 30s, dark hair, pale skin, never facing the camera directly. He'd meet her at Ryan's house. Always when Ryan was away. Then, in April, another man. Taller. Different build. Different pattern. My heart raced as I watched. realization dawning like slow, sharp ice. Caroline had been meeting men regularly at Ryan's house. Then, in late May, it changed. Ryan appeared. Not with Caroline. With another woman. I recognized her. Not immediately. But then she turned to the side, her hair catching the light. Michelle. My secretary. The same woman who had held my hand when I first broke down. Who listened to me as I unraveled. Who handed me tissues, whispered advice, kept me afloat. Who said she'd book my trip to Portland to get my mind off things. I reeled back in my chair, while rising in my throat. Michelle. My confidant. My support. My informant. It was her handwriting on the back of the photo. She was the one who knew about the hotel. She was the one who said, "You need more information." She was the one who offered to help. And she did. She just never told me why. I dug deeper. Michelle and Ryan. That wasn't a one-time thing. There were 6 meetings, according to the footage. Always when Caroline was supposedly seeing someone. I checked the burner phone. Messages I hadn't read. Numbers I hadn't noticed. One of them, a number ending in 2028, was listed under M. Not Ryan. Michelle. I opened the thread. The texts were cold. Precise. Tactical. He's getting suspicious. Let him. It's part of the build. He found the pills. Perfect. Each message was part of a plan. A plan to ruin me. And suddenly, the pieces snapped into place. Michelle and Ryan were having an affair. Ryan knew Caroline had a history, something I'd never talked about, something buried. Years ago, in college, before we met, Caroline was in a relationship with a man who filmed her without her consent. She found out. Left him. He vanished. She never told anyone the man's name. She just said she'd made mistakes. Michelle found that file on my computer. I'd written about it, once. A document labeled Caroline History, Private, tucked deep in my archives. And Michelle had used it. They'd built a fantasy around it. They manipulated Caroline. They built a network of lies, anonymous texts, fake meetings, pre-written messages from burner phones. Michelle guided me into discovering exactly what she wanted me to find. Ryan played the lover. Caroline thought she was doing something illicit, thrilling, something forbidden. And I was the target. The goal wasn't to hurt me emotionally. It was to destroy me. I checked the dates again. 2 weeks before it all began, I'd blocked Ryan's promotion. He was up for lead developer on a high-value contract. I'd flagged errors in his code. Errors that could have cost the company millions. He hadn't forgiven me. Michelle had defended him during the review process. When I overrode them both, I thought it was done. I was wrong. This was payback. Engineered down to the pill foil on the floor. The final USB drive, labeled July, held something different. An audio file. Michelle's voice. Talking to Caroline. I know it feels good to have secrets, she said gently. It's okay. I won't tell anyone. You deserve this. I just feel like he doesn't see me anymore, Caroline replied. Like I'm just a fixture in the house. I understand. And I promise, this won't last forever. It's just a spark. You'll remember what passion feels like. Manipulation. Pure. Calm. Surgical. Michelle hadn't just planted seeds. She'd cultivated them. Watered them with attention, light, validation. She'd led Caroline into the fire and stepped back to watch me burn. But now I held the matches. By noon that day, I had everything sorted. The folder, updated. The drives, labeled. The photos, printed. I sent one packet to HR, just like I had with Ryan. The second went to legal. The third, I handed it directly to Caroline. She opened the envelope, sitting at the kitchen table, eyes rimmed red from the past 2 days. This isn't about you cheating, I said quietly. It's about how they used you. She stared, confused. Then read. Each page deeper. Each photo colder. The final drive, I told her, was the one she needed to hear. I didn't speak as she listened. When it ended, she just sat there, eyes vacant. Then she whispered, "What have I done?" "You were played," I said. "So was I." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she looked at me. "Do you still hate me?" I shook my head. "I don't even know who you are." She nodded, tears falling. "I want to fix it," she said. I stood, walked to the door, and turned once before leaving. "You'll have to start by fixing yourself." Michelle was gone by Monday. Resigned before the board could fire her. Ryan, too. The board quietly dissolved the team. The company moved on. Caroline and I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. There was no fight. No custody battle. Just 2 people who finally saw the wreckage in full light. Sometimes, I still hear the bathroom door click shut in the morning. But now it's just me, alone, with peace. And that strange, sharp freedom that comes only after a storm has destroyed everything that didn't deserve to survive.